How many of you have seen Stephen Colbert do the thing where he confesses to the audience? Anybody see that? It's pretty funny. At any rate, before I start my homily, I've got a little confession to make, so. I got arrested July 17th. Ooh, you. Can I take it? Yeah. They say that every time. No, you probably think it's for getting parking tickets in the red zones. How many got any of those? I got 2, okay. No, actually, it was for an act of civil disobedience. I was involved with 19 other clergy in basically a sit-in at the Federal Building downtown, protesting the separation of children, babies from their parents. I think there's still 500 that are still not reunited with their parents, if they ever will be. Anyway, so that's how I got arrested, okay? I'll have more to say about that at another time. You ready for a homily? Could you be a little more enthusiastic? Are you ready for a homily? All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, many of us have flown in an airplane in the past year or so, and all of us have to decide what we can and cannot take in our checked luggage and in our carry-on bags. And we all basically know what those things are, so I'm not going to list them here in the event that the government's monitoring this. So. I get crazy ideas in my head every now and then. I just can't help it. And I've noticed this problem has worsened in the 23 years I've worked with Father Gary. I'm sure that's a coincidental, not a causal relationship. So, now one crazy idea that popped into my head was this. I wonder what I'd be allowed to take or not take if I were taking a trip to heaven. Now, of course, I asked that of myself in a metaphorical, not in a literal sense. I'm slightly smarter than I look. I know that heaven is not so much a place that I'll be allowed to go to if I'm a good boy. It's a state of being that actually begins here on earth and continues after we die and are transformed through the death and resurrection of Jesus into beings that are capable of living in the kingdom in its fullness. And I take my cue from Jesus' words, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So if I'm packing for a trip to Seattle via Southwest Airlines, I know what I'll need to have once I get there. And I know what I cannot take with me. And the same is true for heaven. There are things I need to take with me, and there are some things I could never take to heaven even if I wanted to. It would simply be impossible. So, what are the things that I can and cannot take with me to heaven? The TSA gives us a list and tells us what we can and cannot take on an airplane. And our second reading gives us a list of what we can and cannot take into heaven. So here's what we cannot take. You know, as you go through the TSA screening, you'll see a list of that for the airplane. Well, our second reading in today's Mass is like that kind of a sign on our journey to heaven. So listen what it tells us. All bitterness, fury, anger, shouting, and reviling must be removed from you, along with all malice. So there you have it. Check what you packed in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. Is there any bitterness there? Is there any fury there? Is there any anger there? Is there any shouting there? Is there any reviling there? Is there any malice there? Now, each of those items have corollaries that are unstated but implied. For example, one byproduct of anger is resentment. Resentment is hanging on to anger, hanging on to the hurt, desiring vengeance, being unwilling to forgive. So try sneaking that one through the heavenly TSA. But the analogy falters a bit here, so I need to make an honest disclaimer. It's not that God or his angels or whoever is in charge of screening is going to keep us out if we try to sneak our resentment in. It's more that we ourselves will keep ourselves out because we refuse to leave our resentment behind and would rather not go to heaven and be without it. It would be akin to refusing to leave our big gulp 32-ounce cup of soda when the TSA officer says, "You can't pass with that." So we say, "No thanks. I'll just skip my trip. No one's taking my big gulp from me." There's something else that occurs to me about deciding what to take on my trip to Seattle. Maybe I think I can sneak something through. Maybe I want to take several things I think I need, but I don't need. So it's nice to have someone you love and trust who loves you and who knows you to lovingly and honestly say to you, "Phil, do you really think you need that?" Or, "Phil, I don't think you can take that through screening." It's not a bad idea to have someone like this give you advice, whether you are on the way to Seattle or to heaven. I've got a couple of people like that in my life. I'm married to one, and the other is a Notre Dame sister who's my spiritual director. I hope each of you has someone like that in your lives. And it's really important that they both say the same thing to listen to it. Since there's an artificial distinction of sorts between this world and the world to come, we might stop and think of what we're taking with us each day as we get up in the morning and venture out. What am I taking with me to the family breakfast table when I get up in the morning? What do my wife, my husband, my kids, my parents, my roommates see that I brought to the table? What am I taking with me to school, to the classroom, or to work? What am I taking with me when I venture out into the community where I live, when I go out with my friends? What am I taking with me when I come to Mass here at the CSC? Which reminds me, I've listed some of the things that should not be taken: bitterness, fury, anger, shouting, reviling, and all malice. But I neglected to list what our second reading implies we should take with us. Here they are. Be kind to one another. Compassionate. Forgiving one another as God has forgiven you in Christ. So there you have it. As we awaken each day and continue our journey to the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, we should take with us these three things at a minimum: kindness, compassion, forgiveness. And you know what? Sometimes we forget to pack something when we're preparing for a trip. So what do? Turn around, go back and get it. Make sure you put it in a place where you can find it when you need it. And by the way, there are some other things to consider before boarding a plane. We all want to have in our possession at all times these three things: safety, esteem or affection, and control. But sometimes the wisest thing to do is to trust those things to others. For example, leave control of the plane to the pilot. Don't hijack it because you can't trust the pilot and think that you and you alone are the only one who has the knowledge, skill, and ability to fly the plane. Don't let your excessive need for control and safety interfere with your good judgment. Take a risk and trust that someone else can do a better job than you. The need for safety and security, the need for affection and esteem, the need for power and control, these are not bad things unless these needs are excessive. When packing for a trip, 2 ounces of aftershave or perfume will suffice. We don't need 20 ounces. We trust that if we need more when we arrive, someone at our destination cares enough for us that it will be provided in good measure, pressed down, flowing over, poured into your lap. At least that's what it says in Luke 6:38. So don't cash in your 401ks and empty your bank account when you leave on a trip. And to reference something that Father Gary Hogan preached on last month in that gospel, just take what you need and trust that it will be enough. Maybe just the clothes on your back and a walking stick, if they let you take that through screening. Tell the TSA person it's a cane. Okay. And it's the same with love. It's like the air that we breathe. There will be plenty of oxygen on the plane and at your destination. You don't have to load up with oxygen tanks or take a deep breath and try to hold it all the way to Seattle. Breathe in the air and then let it go out from you. Let it go, trusting that it will return to you in abundance, sufficient for your needs. Love has a way of never running out. It need not be treated as a possession to be jealously guarded and kept to oneself, as if love were one's personal possession. If that's the way it is, it was never love in the first place. And finally, to make it easier for us to remember all of this, we might focus on the last sentence of our second reading. So be imitators of God as beloved children and live in love, as Christ loved us and handed himself over for us as a sacrificial offering to God for a fragrant aroma. In other words, if you can remember only one thing to take with you as you venture out, let it be love. You've heard the expression, you can't take it with you. Well, love is the only thing you can take with you.